do you remember the episode that had Wallace Shawn in it?
Yes, I did. That was
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Right. Okay. So
Ties that bind, I believe.
I don't know if you ever heard this story, but and it's such a funny story to me, is that I got a call one day from a buddy of mine named Mike Roberds, who has since passed away. He was a really funny guy. Yeah, he's a lovely guy, but he was really in fact, if you ever saw a show called The New Addams Family, you try and find it.
Okay.
The New Addams Family. And side note, Ellie Harvey plays Morticia, and Ellie Harvey played Novak.
Yes, she did.
The show where she got the hiccups, right? And was drinking from a glass of water or whatever. Right?
Damn it,
that's Ellie. That's Ellie Harvey, and she played Morticia. Mike Roberds played Uncle Fester.
Oh, wow, okay.
He was this round little guy. And he was very funny. Anyway, one day he calls me up and he goes, Gary, you're not going to believe this. I got an audition for Stargate. And I was like, oh, great, Mike. That's awesome. Because people who are close to me, they knew that I'd been on the show forever. Right. And so if they got everybody wanted to audition for Stargate and get on Stargate and do something on Stargate. And I was like, what is the part? He goes, oh, I'm auditioning for the part of this alien. And he says to me, I'm just asking you, what is, how should I play it? Like, it's kind of a funny part, right? It's got comedy in it. And how should I play it? And I just happened to realize that I was in that episode. It was upcoming and I had the script. I couldn't believe it. I was like, Mike, I've got the script right here. Let me have a look. Swear to God. So I peel through it and I read what he's going to do. And it was quite funny. And I said, oh, Mike, you know what? This is the great thing about Stargate writing in terms of comedy. I go, you don't have to do anything. The writing is enough. You don't have to push it. You don't have to make a meal of it. I go, I can read it right here and I can tell that it's funny. You just need to be you and just do it, right? And he goes, oh, great. So he goes and does his audition, phones me back after, and he says, he goes, guess what? The audition went really well. He goes, thank you so much for your advice. I think I really knocked it out of the park. It was great. And I said, Mike, I can't wait to work with you. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't cast you. And so a couple of days go by, and of course, when they cast, it's like the episode's coming up pretty fast, so they like to get their casting done quite quickly, right? So if you don't know, like, kind of like the day after, then it's like
something's wrong.
What's going on? So he waited like 2 days and he hadn't heard, and so he calls me up and he says, he goes, do you know, have you heard anything? Like, I haven't heard anything. I said, well, Mike, sorry, but the production team doesn't usually call me to let me know who's cast and who's not been cast. I go, I don't get those calls, so I really can't tell. I don't know, for whatever reason, right? Okay, so he's like, oh, okay, I'll just wait here. Cut to, I walk on set, right? And on that, and I didn't even know who was directing that episode at that point, but I walk on, and it's a guy named Will Waring, and Will seriously used to be the B camera operator.
Correct.
So, anybody who knows about filming, it's like they have the A camera who shoots all the stars, and the B camera who shoots like me. And the secondary stuff and the, stuff that they fit in later sometimes. But Will had worked his way up to be a director because he was beloved. Will is a fantastic guy. He's like, oh my God. And he's really good at what he does. So they went, okay, Will, you're going to have a shot at directing. And they gave him this episode. So I walk on, and I always would come on set, go into where they're shooting and just say hi and just check in and whatever. And I see Will, and I'm like, oh, Will, congratulations on shooting this. He goes, oh yeah, thanks a lot. He goes, hey, guess what? You know who we nailed for this episode as the alien? And I go, who? And he goes, Wallace Shawn. And I go, oh my God.
Right.
Oh, Wallace Shawn is the alien?
Right.
And he goes, yeah. And he goes, and I go, oh, a really good buddy of mine auditioned for that part, Mike Roberds. And he was wondering why he didn't get cast. And he goes, let me tell you something. Mike Roberts was fantastic.
Yeah.
He did such a good job. And I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, you want to know what happens? Kind of a funny story. So Mike is auditioning for Joe and Paul because they were the ones in the casting, the casting thing. And there's Mike auditioning, and Joe writes on a piece of paper and slides it over to Paul, and it says, "Reminds me of Wallace Shawn."
Oh,
and he just slides it over to Paul, and Paul looks at Mike, and Paul writes on the piece of paper, gives it back to Joe, says, "Think we can get Wallace Shawn?"
That's what happened.
They called Wallace Shawn's agent. Wallace Shawn was in a play in New York or something like that. He was in a play, and he was dark on like the Monday. Like, dark days in a play means that
you're free.
You're free. You're free that day. They flew him up and filmed him in a day, and then flew him back. And oh my God, I could not. So I called Mike. I go, well, guess what? Guess what? You Wallace Shawn'd your way out of that audition. He's like, what? I go, you were so much like Wallace Shawn that they hired Wallace Shawn. He's like, what? I go, you idiot.
You inspired them to cast someone else. You were that good.
You were that good. You acted so much like you were so good and funny that you made them think of Wallace Shawn, so they just hired Wallace Shawn. And that's why you didn't get cast. And he was like,
I'm going to go jump off a building now.
No, he goes, well, I guess I can take solace in, that I acted well. But we just laughed our asses off. I mean,
how are you supposed to respond to that? What can you do? That is the
stuff as an actor you would never know in a million years, because they're not going to call you and go, you know what, Mike, call his agent, tell Mike he was fantastic, but he was so much like Wallace Shawn that we hired the actual Wallace Shawn. So Mike didn't get cast. You don't get that. So it was only through me being in the episode, him having called me, and otherwise I wouldn't have even had a clue. I would have just walked on set and gone, wow, Wallace Shawn's in this episode? Oh, that's cool. But because it was this my buddy Mike, who was hilarious, was I able to have fun with it.
And inspired them to go a different way without putting a penny in his pocket. The creative process is one that is it's an interesting one. Like in situations like this, what are you going to do? If you inspire them to go with someone else, I think that's probably a new one that I've ever heard, inspiring someone to say, you know what, you're so much like someone else. I want to go with that person because you made me think of them.
I know, it's the first time I've heard of it too. And I just killed myself laughing. It was so funny. And Mike and I had a really good laugh about it. To me, that's just the best story. That's the best story.
Thanks for watching this clip from Dial the Gate. You can find the full live stream shows on our YouTube channel or visit dialthegate.com for the complete schedule. See you on the other side.